really. What is your favorite novel? Often, one of the most memorable things about a book can be the characters, what they did, how they acted in the situations. However, character development can be very difficult. I myself enjoy writing, so I understand the struggle. Creating a realistic character within fiction writing can be hard, but I have some tips on how to do that. The character. How much do you know? There are many aspects to creating a character. First, you need to think about their personality, then their habits, then, most of all, their background. Personality. How good is their moral compass? The moral compass is very important because it can foreshadow how the character what path they'll take. If they have a bit of a weak moral compass, they may end up succumbing to the dark side in the story, while those with a strong moral compass are often the heroes. What are their weaknesses? What are their strengths? Say your character has a weakness for cats. Every time they see a cat, even if they're on the side of a road, they will stop and get the cat because they have a weakness for them. While at the same time, their strength may be compassion. That's why they have to stop and save the cat. Are they outgoing or are they introverted? This is important because outgoing people and introverted people act very differently. Say your character is introverted. Do you think they'd be the one to stand up in the front of the classroom with no prompting whatsoever? I don't think so. Are they more gentle or harsh? This changes how the character speaks. While the gentle person would be more passive with things, the harsh one would be more confrontative. According to the Writer's Guide to Character Emotion, you should simply show how the character felt, saw, heard, and decided. Instead of using words like said, asked, or thought, you should use mused, questioned, or pondered. Next, we move on to habits. Habits are very important. I keep saying that, but then again, most of this is. When it comes to habits, some authors forget to add them. How do you portray nervous tics? You portray a nervous tic through actions you aren't entirely aware of, but through stress. Like they could chew on their fingernails, or they could bounce their leg, or they could pick at the skin on their fingers, as my friends often do. They sort of show how the character is feeling, like the Writer's Guide said. What sort of habits are good to use? The habits you should use are the subtle ones. The ones that you wouldn't entirely pick up on, but they're there in case if you look for them. Habits are important because it makes your character more human. Without habits, they would sit completely still. They wouldn't have the habit of crossing their legs or bouncing their foot on the floor. They would just sit there, waiting for their cues. You, as the author, are a puppeteer, but don't allow your character to become a lifeless doll. Make them human-like. Background. The past. Darian Smith, author of the Psychology Workbook for Writers, stresses how important background is. For an example, I'm going to pass around a character I've been writing about and a brief history about him. Background is important. Without background, how do you know how your character would act? With Zachary, at the age of 8, he was orphaned. His parents died in a car crash. And because of this, he gained some phobias. He has a phobia of cars. He has claustrophobia. And he has some OCD. This helps give the character depth because you can see why he has these phobias and these disorders. Without it, you just say, he has OCD, he has depression. Why? I don't know. I wanted him to. Background gives the character depth. In my story, Zachary meets his best friend when, at the age of 14, his sister gets arrested for possession. He ends up in a foster home and fostered by a family. He becomes friends with his brother, his foster brother, and his best friend, Charlotte Fellers. This friendship lasts throughout the entire book. It affects the story in many ways. I would like to end with an excerpt from the Psychology Workbook for Writers. In transactional analysis, this is called the life scripting. The decisions that are made about the world are locked into a storyline in a person's mind and are often very difficult to shift. People then behave according to their script, often ignoring the events of the real world that don't support their scripted beliefs. And these are my sources.
Do you plan on being an actor?
A writer.
Film director?